Hello, welcome to episode 161 of the Epic Film Challenge, to 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die, 1994's Chungking Express, directed by Wong Kar-wai. I believe this might be the first... no, it's not, because there's a Chinese ghost story. But there hasn't been many Chinese films, many films from Hong Kong so far in this series. I'm sure there's many more in the book I haven't got to yet, and Chungking Express was the first film I watched on Filmstruck, which is basically the Criterion version of Netflix. They've teamed with Criterion. Criterion previously released Chungking Express, which I believe was one of their very first Blu-ray releases almost 10 years ago now, and that Blu-ray is long out of print. I actually almost ordered it in the Barnes & Noble 50% off sale that just started a couple of days ago, but it is out of print. I didn't realize, so I looked on Filmstruck, which I recently signed up to, and there it was. So I watched it on Filmstruck. It was my first kind of experience, and I really enjoyed it, I have to say. It was quite nice to have there. Not any of the special features, sadly, because some of the films on Filmstruck do have special features. Anyway, that's a whole other video. Chungking Express, let's talk about this film. First film I've seen by Wong Kar-wai, and you know, I haven't seen many films from Hong Kong in general. You know, Japanese films have definitely been more my forte over the past few years, and so it's interesting to see the subtle differences in styles of filmmaking. And speaking of styles of filmmaking, that's something that is very integral to this film, is a style of filmmaking. This film is very stylistic, I think, and the way that it's shot really adds so much to it. I had a weird kind of ongoing thought process with this film when I watched it, because I really enjoyed the first 40 minutes or so. And it's basically a film of two stories. You know, I can't avoid spoilers at this point, really, but I'm not going to go into heavy spoilers. But, well, yeah, I guess, I mean, there's, you know, it is what it is. Let's just talk about it. It's a film of two stories, and I didn't know this going in. So I was getting invested in these characters. 40 minutes into the film, 42 minutes, it switches to another set of characters. And I thought, okay, well, you know, I'm looking forward to getting back to that first story. It became apparent about half an hour into the second story that we weren't going to see any more from that first story, and that story, which kind of had a resolution, kind of didn't, was going to be left, and we were going to concentrate on this new story. And I just suddenly kind of lost faith in the film. I was unhappy that the first half, you know, wasn't going to get, you know, properly wrapped up. And by the end of the film, I loved the second story more than the first story, and I thought the film was brilliant. It won me over, and apparently this is a film that Wong Kar-wai made almost as a release, I'm kind of guessing, because he was making this very big film at the time, this big production, a martial arts film, and he wanted to do something a little bit different, a little bit more quick, free-flowing. And so during the post-production of this film that he was making, the big martial arts film, he made Chungking Express, and made it, finished it, and released it before the one he had, you know, already finished shooting before. So it was a really quick production, and very kind of fly by the seat of your pants as far as I, you know, have read into. And it was like most of his films, and I don't know if this is a running trend with Chinese directors in general, but it was made without really a shooting script. It kind of was just, let's just do the scenes, and, you know, just very not improvised, but certainly not pre-planned down to the T either. So that's a really interesting way of working, and you wouldn't think it with this film. You'd think this film was meticulously plotted out and a year had been put into it, but it was really quite quickly put together, and I've done over a course of about 3 months, I think. And so, yeah, it's intriguing to look into the background and production of this, seeing it, and it just seems like such a fully formed kind of thing, but really to know that it was more of a kind of free-flowing kind of production is kind of interesting, to use my favorite word. Now the story follows two cops. In the first story, we have a cop who is a jilted, you know, boyfriend. His girlfriend has just recently left him on April Fool's Day of all days, and he's kind of operating under the hope that his girlfriend is going to come back to him, that it's all just an April Fool's joke. I mean, he doesn't really believe that, but that's kind of one of the kind of funny throwaway lines in the film. And he kind of is waiting until May 1st, 1994. That's the day where she's going to come back to me. I'm going to give it a month. And he's obsessing over buying tins of pineapple that all have the date the 1st of May 1994, and you know, some of the film takes place on like the 30th of April, where he's trying to get like a can with the 1st of May on it, and the shopkeeper's like, but it expires tomorrow, you know. He's like, I don't care, I need it. So you see this kind of obsessive nature and this inner monologue of a guy who is pining for his girlfriend who left him. On the other side of that, we have a character, this woman who's a drug smuggler, and she wears this very distinctive kind of blonde wig in the film, and a raincoat and glasses. I think she says that she wears the raincoat and glasses because she never knows when it's going to rain or when it's going to be too sunny, so she's kind of always prepared, which gives you the idea that she's someone who's gone through probably a lot of shit in her life, and feels the need to protect herself from anything that she can. And we see her kind of operating with these Indians, and she's kind of hiring them to smuggle some drugs across a border into another country, and those two characters cross paths. And it's kind of set up, or, you know, at least from the male character's perspective, this is going to be, you know, my next romance. I decided the next person who walks into this bar is going to be the woman I fall in love with. And they have a very unromantic kind of couple of scenes together. And that's kind of the end of that story. And he gets some resolution, but you're wondering if perhaps he's just a character who, or, you know, a person who is always kind of maybe looking too much into things and gleaning too much out of things that aren't really there. That's what I got the feeling from him, almost a hopeless romantic in a way. But I very much enjoyed that first part of the story. I wanted to see more of the female character, whose name we never learn. Her character definitely has a resolution, like a solid kind of an arc and a moving on from, you know, what she was doing, and I just wanted to see more of that. But you know, the male character was interesting to me. I liked how he you know, he was holding on to this past and was trying to be optimistic about a future and trying to find a new girlfriend and things like that. And one of the key parts of his character was that, you know, whenever he gets sad, whenever he goes through a breakup, he goes running, because when he sweats, it means that there's no more water left in his body for him to cry, which I think is a really nice little piece of writing in the film. So then the second part of the film has another cop with a different designation number, and they kind of make note of that designation number a lot. And there's also a theme of uniforms in the film, because this second cop, he has a girlfriend and she leaves him, and she's a stewardess, so her uniform plays into that a lot as well. And they meet later on in the film, both out of uniform, and they kind of note how they both look in outside of their uniform. And yeah, I like that kind of detail in the film as well. And this cop loses his girlfriend, and he keeps going to this kind of I don't know what you'd call it. It's like this kind of open kind of fast food joint. You know, it's just there in the street. You just walk in. There's no real door to the place. You know, it's just free and open like a market. And you go and you buy something, like a hot dog or whatever, or some salad or burger, pizza. And he goes there all the time, and he's actually talking about, like, you know, getting food for his girlfriend. And the guy who works at this fast food place is saying, oh, you should. Don't get her that. Get her something different, you know. She might like something different. He's always trying to kind of match make all the characters. And this fast food place is called Midnight Express. That's where the express in the title of the film comes from, because this fast food joint is a location in both parts of the story. It's really the only thing that links the two sets of characters. Now, apparently this fast food place is on another part of Hong Kong somewhere. As far as the city's concerned, in Kowloon, I think. I don't know the geography of it, whereas a lot of the film, in the first half at least, takes place in Chungking Mansion. Now, Chungking Mansion is this big building that I think now is basically just like a backpacker kind of haven, you know. It's this huge building with all these levels, all these layers, these little back alleyways, these shops, these stalls, you know, electronics stores, food places, really cheap kind of hostels, you know, just this hive of activity. There's lots of foreigners to China living there. And you know, this film is kind of depicted as this kind of you know, drug hotspot, or at least somewhere where a lot of illicit things are going on, bars, you know. And I love that location. It's that feeling in a lot of places in that part of the world where everything is packed in tight. They're trying to get all of this huge, massive humanity that has accumulated in these countries, and they're trying to fit them all into as tight a space as possible, and building the. I mean, I'm surprised really that, you know, places in China and over there have not really, you know, got to the level of like Coruscant in like Star Wars, where it's just like thousands of feet high skyscrapers upon thousands of feet high skyscrapers, you know, just packing in all these people. But that's kind of the feeling you get, and there's something really intriguing about those kinds of places to me. That, you know, the Chungking Mansion, like I'd love to go there. You know, I'd feel unsafe there, but I'd love to go there and experience it, you know. And just a feeling of claustrophobia, I think, going into a place like that. And just, there's so many people in such a small place and so many things going on. And there's something alluring about it and scary about it at the same time. It's enticing and it's repelling, you know. There's just something about places like that. And I was like looking into it online and stuff. There was a place called the Walled City, which looked like just mental, like something out of a science fiction movie that's no longer around. But anyway, going way off track. So this fast food joint, Midnight Express, plays a big part, and the manager there at Midnight Express is played by the on-set photographer of the film. And apparently this was the start of a trend for Wong Kar-wai, where he would hire people who were working on the crew, like a carpenter, to be a part in the film. And so this on-set photographer played the manager of the Midnight Express fast food joint, and he was one of the best parts of the film. I loved his character, I loved his acting. Again, it's hard to kind of decipher acting when you don't understand the language, but just his cadence, the way he spoke, even though I couldn't understand it, I found it funny, and I found his character really endearing. So we have this second cop and a young girl who just started working at Midnight Express. She's a cousin of the owner, I believe, and she falls in love with the cop. So we have these two love stories that are very different, but they're both about the exact same thing. Someone trying to move on unsuccessfully from a breakup. Someone who's still holding on to the possibility that, you know, when they come home, that person's going to be there again. And we go into their inner monologue. We hear a lot of voiceover in the film, kind of just ruminating over things in your head. And there's a great scene with that second cop where he's in his house, his apartment, and he's just looking at the stuff in his apartment and picking it up and talking to it and stuff. You know, like a wet rag, and saying, "Why are you crying?" You know, and it sounds silly when I say it, but I really like the way that it was weaved into the film. And in his apartment, the second cop, you look out of his window and there's like a public escalator, you know, everything's so packed in, and there's something that I like about those settings. I guess I like watching them in films, but wouldn't like to maybe live in them. Maybe I would. There's something about it that really just clicks with me in a weird way, where I find it so fascinating, that that kind of just condensed form of living, you know, that there's something, yeah, I just feel like I'd like to experience it or know what it feels like for some reason. Anyway, the cinematography is a big part of the film. There's some great effects there. There's a fantastic scene where the second cop is waiting for a date, and he's sat at a jukebox, and he's slowly putting a coin into the jukebox, and behind him there are people in the bar walking past in very fast kind of time-lapse photography. So there's some trickery going on there that was really bewildering to kind of decipher how did they do that, but it really worked for the scene and the feeling of the character in that moment. There's a lot of slow motion in the film, which is very kind of disorienting and juddery. Like, you can tell it wasn't filmed you know, at a certain kind of frame rate where you get this smooth slow motion, which I'm a big fan of. So I don't know if it was slowed down after the fact or what, but it just kind of had this weird, I didn't like it a lot of the time. But there's some parts where it really worked. There's a scene right at the end, and just to kind of go off on a side tangent, when I was kind of thinking in my head, you know, do I like this film, do I not like this film? They say that, you know, if you start checking your watch at any point during a film, then the film's lost you. But I think that there's another side to that as well, where you're towards the end of a film and you need to see how long is left because you don't want it to end. And I did that with this film. I was like, oh God, I gotta check because I really hope this isn't about to end. There was a shot of a sign outside a bar, and there was like rain pouring down it, and then suddenly the film slows down and the rain just starts slowing down until it's not even moving. And I thought, holy shit, that's a great shot. Oh no, this is the end of the film. I want more of a resolution. And it continued, and I was, you know, happy with that. So there's these great visual moments in the film, like a super extreme close-up of like a tin of sardines. You know, the expiration date is kind of a theme in the film. There are these cross-sectioning kind of ideas throughout both of the stories. Music that keeps recurring. California Dreamin' is a song that is used so much in the second part of the film, to the point where if you don't like that song, it's going to drive you crazy because they play it all the time. But it's there for a reason. You know, it's part of that story with those two characters. And again, I feel like I barely scratched the surface with this film, which is probably a good thing. And No, again, I don't like to rate films too much, but I logged it on Letterboxd and I put in 4.5 stars out of 5. And you know, when I was halfway through the film and I was disappointed about the first story being, you know, very, you know, just on its own, I thought this film's lost me. You know, now I'm feeling, now I'm sat down and talking about it, this is a 5-star film. You know, there's so much there, and I can't wait to go back again because I know that the characters, the main characters in the second story, appear in the first story, kind of in the background. I'm really looking forward to checking that out. But I like the character of the cop who, you know, was hoping his girlfriend would come back, and the character of the girl who worked at the fast food place, and she kind of fell in love with this cop, and through a series of circumstances I won't go into, she gets the key to his apartment and she visits it every day and cleans up his stuff, and you know, this is very weird and quirky. Quirky is definitely something that is a part of this film in full flow. There's a lot of kind of oddities to the characters, the quirks, and all those little details, especially with that girl who goes into the apartment every day. But yeah, again, the character of the stewardess, who is a very small character in the film, but I really, you know, when we get a good scene with her, between her and the cop, and I just wanted more from that, you know. And it was that good kind of more where, you know, it's fine that there wasn't, it leaves you wanting more, but not to the point where you're annoyed that I'm not making any sense. This film is quite this film is quite a labyrinth of ideas, much like the Chungking Mansion is a labyrinth, literally, of places and shops and people and no doubt smells and sights and sounds. But it's a film I'm going to get more out of the more I watch it, I think, and it's definitely one to go back to. And again, I tell you what, halfway through the film I was thinking, I'm not going to watch this again probably. It's weird how just giving a film that full chance and watching all of it, like I just feel like there's so many opportunities I'd miss out on if I was one of those people who would give a film 45 minutes and then turn it off. You know, I mean, obviously there are those films that are just, you know, there's no coming back from them. The first, what was it, Cosmopolis, David Cronenberg, I believe, left the cinema. Like, that half an hour in, I'm not getting this film, you know, but maybe I would have. I'm thinking about that now. So anyway, this has been quite a cluster of a video, but suffice it to say, I love Chungking Express. I love the score. Obviously a lot of songs are used, but there's this great kind of jazzy score that is beautiful. I just love the locations and the characters and that feeling of after a breakup, you know. And there are lots of different kinds of breakups. There are those happy ones where it's mutual and you both know you're moving on to better things. It's the opposite of that, where you're absolutely heartbroken and you feel like you're never going to be the same. The breakups in this film fall on kind of the lower scale. The people who are longing for a partner, you know, maybe they're not, okay, that was the love of my life. It's people who have kind of come to accept the fact that they've broken up, but they're still holding on to the possibility that they can go back to that kind of safeness of a relationship, while at the same time maybe seeking, you know, the next relationship. And so there's kind of an emotional maturity thing going on there, I think, with the characters. And I really love the performance of the second cop. I thought that he was brilliant in the film, especially towards the end. I think he really conveyed a lot without saying anything with his performance. And I loved the ending. The ending was great. I loved it. So yeah, is it a film you must see before you die? Again, halfway through the film, I would have said, no, it's not a film you should see before you die. There's lots of nice things about it, but I'm pissed off that they left that first story. But now that I gave it the chance, and, you know, yeah, it's a film you should see before you die. You might not get on with it. It isn't going to be a universally kind of like, everyone will love this film, it's a masterpiece. No, I wouldn't go that far, but it's a film that I think I love. And I'm looking forward to going back to it. Like, I'm itching to get back to it, actually. Okay, I don't know where I'm going to throw this into the video, but this is recorded a few days after my initial review. After I'd finished talking about Chungking Express, it just wouldn't leave my head. You know, some of these films I watch from the book, you know, they're great. I think they're fantastic films, but they kind of leave my consciousness pretty quickly. This one really grabbed hold and kind of just dug into my brain. And so I went out and I found the commentary recorded for Criterion by Tony Raines, the noted Asian film expert. And it was a very good commentary. I listened to all of it, and it gave me more insight into the film, more insight into Wong Kar-wai. And I'm not going to just regurgitate all the information I heard in that commentary, but there were some interesting tidbits there that I wanted to touch on. Also, when I talked about the slow motion, that looked like it had been slowed down later, and that it looked kind of like not like smooth, and I didn't, you know, like it as much. Apparently that is called step printing. At least I think I got that right. But basically the process is, I don't know how they do it exactly, but it's playing around with frame rates to kind of achieve the visual trick of something appearing to be, you know, slowed down but moving fast at the same time. And I can kind of see where the appeal of doing something like that is. It's something weird, it's different, it's unreal, you know. So at least now I know what that was. Still not a big fan of it. I think that Tarantino used it in the opening credits of Reservoir Dogs. To me it just looks like bad quality slow motion. But I did love the moments where it was you know, slow motion in one section of the frame and then fast motion in the other part of the frame, like when the second cop is putting the coin into the jukebox and the people in the bar are moving fast around him. That stuff I loved. A scene that I forgot to talk about that I really liked was when the second cop was coming into Midnight Express and he was ordering a chef's salad and he wants to you know, get it for his girlfriend, and the manager's like, well, why don't you get her this instead? And he's like, well, what if she doesn't like it? He's like, well, buy both then, you know. And so the second cop keeps coming back day after day to order different types of food for his girlfriend, and the whole scene plays out like it's one moment in time, but really it's taking place over days and days. But the way the camera keeps cutting to different angles and the cop keeps coming up to, I just love the way that the time was compacted into a short scene and told, you know, something that took place over a few days. I really like that editing style and just the construction of the scenes. And I just continue to find it so impressive how good this film is, considering how, you know, fly-by-night the process of making it was, and learning more about that from the commentary when I listened to by Tony Raines. The actor who plays the first cop in the first story of the film had an interesting background from where he was raised and born, and so he spoke Japanese from his father's side and spoke various different types of Chinese, Mandarin, Cantonese. So in the film he speaks Mandarin, Cantonese, English and Japanese. And that's something that the actor had, and it wasn't part of the script, you know, in the story when the film was made, so that was worked into it. So something Wong Kar-wai would do is take these things from the actors and work them into the story, which I think is really cool. And then also the actress Faye Wong, who was a singer. This is her first film role, and she plays the girl working at Midnight Express in the second part of the film. Apparently she was very good with her body as far as acting goes, but Wong Kar-wai could tell she wasn't too comfortable with dialogue. So for a lot of the first kind of part of her story, she doesn't say much, which to me felt like just an artistic choice. This is a character who's closed off and isn't saying much, and she's not saying much for a reason, but it turned out to be kind of reality seeping into the story. You know, he wouldn't give her the dialogue because she wasn't confident in delivering it, and as the shoot went on, because they shot the film chronologically, she got more comfortable, and that's where more lines started coming in. So I thought that was a really cool thing, because it really works for the character. This kind of, there's an enigma about this character and why she doesn't speak much and stuff, and so I found her more interesting. And it was through the real life kind of baby steps of this singer coming into to act for the first time. I didn't know that, and how would I, that you see all of the main characters from the second story in the first story, kind of just in the background, which reminds me of the Three Colors trilogy, where you kind of see some of the characters from all three films kind of bleed over in very short scenes. Also, there's a sequence set to What a Difference a Day Makes, the song, and it's kind of the second cop and his stewardess girlfriend, and you know, the theme of flight and stuff like that, which plays into the film very well, especially towards the end of the film. That came from Wong Kar-wai as a kid, seeing a commercial, but some flight company, they had a commercial set to that song. So for him, for his whole life, that song was just intrinsically linked with flight, so he used it in this film. And I love stuff like that too. All these little pieces of inspiration we pick up throughout our lives, we can pour into our art when we're older, and so I liked hearing all that stuff. It's a great commentary. I had to download it because you know, the Criterion is long out of print and costs hundreds of dollars. But you know, Tony Raines had spoken to Wong Kar-wai, so it wasn't one of those kinds of, you know, critics coming in and kind of, you know, projecting stuff. They'd actually knew the director and had spoken to him, and lots of interesting little bits of trivia, like the apartment from the second cop in the film, 663, I think. His apartment was the cinematographer's apartment, and so, you know, it just, yeah, really cool bits of trivia. And I've gone far too long in this video as it is, but there's just more things I want to talk about, and I really feel like this film is going to grow so much more in my estimation the more I watch it. So I'm really excited to get back to it. I don't know whether this is going to cut back into the video I recorded a couple of days ago, but I had to talk more about this film. So there you go, it's a bumper edition. So on with the ending of this video somehow. So yeah, that's it for Chungking Express. I'm sure there's more I could talk about. I really thought I could sum this up in about 8 minutes, but it's gone far longer than that. It is what it is. I'm very intrigued to dive into more of Wong Kar-wai's filmography. I think there's another film of his that's in the book. Failing that, leave me recommendations for any of his other films if you've seen them. Leave me your thoughts on this one if you've seen it. If I missed anything, any kind of key details, I'd love to kind of hear more about this film because I find it so interesting and full of depth, even though it's a film that was kind of thrown together in a way from what I'm reading. I find that very intriguing, and sometimes when you make art, it can just be one of those things where it just comes out, and it doesn't have this meticulous planning, and something just becomes something out of nothing, and you kind of just roll with it, and it works, and it connects with people, and that's what I think this film probably is. So yeah, really enjoyed the film. I think Connie's coming in now, so it's a good time to wrap this up. I'll see you in the next video.